welcome to Quackalope. Thank you for joining us. Today we're having a conversation about, well, the business of board games, or board games as a business, I assume. I just really like the bees at the front of the video title, and so I thought I'd throw them all in here. We all come from different walks of life, different professional backgrounds, and currently work full-time in different capacities in the board game industry, all of us in arguably fairly notable positions. And I'll break down where we're all connected with and from, but I thought this would be an interesting three-way conversation about the avenues towards getting a career in this hobby, the challenges that are presented in this hobby, some of the ways that this being a small sort of startup-style hobby space mistreats and also does right by different people, depending on where you are and how you enter and how you kind of experience this journey. And then also, I just thought it would be a cool way to share all of our personal histories and backgrounds and stories, because I find that in this space, the more information you have about the people and where they come from and the diverse experiences and backgrounds that they have, the better context you have for where you fit in this space. And this is such a cool, welcoming, incredible community that the more people we have talking and sharing and providing their professional insight from outside of our hobby, the better our hobby gets every step of the way. So, that being said, I'm Jesse Anderson from Quackalope, a professional photographer and videographer. I lived and worked in Washington, D.C. for 5 or so years before the pandemic hit, and I doubled down on Quackalope. I now run the channel you're watching with something like 40,000 subscribers at the time of filming this video. And over the last about 2 years, 3 years, we've been one of the fastest growing board game media channels in the space. Myself, Board Game Co., and Before You Play, Monique and Naveen, who are all three of them are incredible. And we do, media. We do social media advertising, we do video production, and we kind of have a storied history and journey here, rife with, losing tens of thousands of dollars along the way, having the bottom drop out from under me multiple times, like all these things we can get into. But before we get there, Travis, Lindsay, I'd love to hear you all. I just want to open the floor for a second to let you all introduce what your history is, and where you professionally work at the moment.
My name is Lindsay Friend. I am the business development and marketing manager for the Dice Tower, and I have been doing that for 4 years. I came from out of market. I did not know anything about board games until I was introduced by Travis here, who introduced me to Tom 4 years ago, and at the time I was working in banking, doing opening up banks, and I was commuting 3 hours. I had kind of a terrible work-life balance where I was in the car a lot, scrambling to get my kids home from school, get them to their different activities, doing laundry at 10 o'clock at night, waking up at 4 in the morning, just things that you find yourself doing, and then incredibly exhausted come the weekend without a whole lot of energy to do anything other than, relax, sleep, and then get up on Monday and do it all over again. So I kind of came into this looking for a little bit of work-life balance and, something that was a little bit more creative where I could, enjoy spending time with my kids and also do something that was just a little bit more fun and something that did more than just, put food on the table and gas in my car. So this has been a really interesting ride for me. I've really enjoyed working with the Dice Tower and helping them grow their channel through, networking with publishers and finding ways to help them grow and get more exposure for their games. It's been a lot of fun, and I have a lot of credit goes to Travis, who introduced me to Tom, and I'd love to talk about our current project and how we kind of came to be here with Jesse tonight, but
we'll get into that. But your argument, the crux of your position, is that working for the Dice Tower is more fun than opening chain banks. That's
that.
Wow.
Or driving 3 hours
shocking.
a day.
Yeah. So
anyone that's watched this
Florida.
channel, Florida's the caveat there.
Yeah.
Travis, you want to introduce yourself, and then we'll talk. We'll touch on this project that's scattered across the table. We'll get there in a second.
Let me clear my throat. Excuse me. Hi, I am Travis Chance. I currently am the senior designer at CMOD.
Oh, wow.
I have worked in gaming for almost a decade. I used to own a little company called Action Phase Games. We
Okay.
did a game called Aeon's End, and we did a game called Heroes Wanted, and a game called Kodama. And I did that with one of my best friends, Nick Little, very talented Nick Little. We then went and worked for Indie Boards and Cards,
Mm-hmm.
who acquired us. I was there for a little while, and then I started Colossal Games.
Where I met you.
That's right. We met, other than in the halls of my very most pleasant dreams. So yes, you met me back in those days, and Colossal's probably most known for Western Legends. I was the president of Colossal for 3 years, and then Lindsay and I started a company in December of 2019.
Good year. Wow.
Yeah, it was great, and it was an event-based, focused
Oh, wow.
company.
That had to have really taken off.
Yes, and then COVID happened, and things changed.
Yeah.
So yeah, I've been working in the publishing side. I do a lot of the creative stuff too. I make games, but I also do a lot of the infrastructural stuff. Working with lots of talented people, doing business development type things, and yeah. So I love it. Before this I was a musician. I lived in New York City. I was a drummer, and one day I picked up a 5-pound IKEA nightstand and blew out my shoulder. And I know, if there is a hell, I
And then
will be
you-
building IKEA furniture there.
Transferred to Calyx's.
I did I'd only ever been a musician. I was like every tattoo guy cliche. I was like a bartender, DJ, drummer, triple threat. And
Drummer, DJ, and what else? You got to go with the D's
oh yeah.
instead of the B's.
And there's other D words that come to mind, but I will say. So I did that, and I was very lucky. I think I've had a kind of an interesting life in so much that I've made money doing things that I've loved for pretty much my whole life. I didn't really figure out how to like monetize until I was in my 30s. I'm 44 now. But I've been very, very lucky that I've been able to make things, and that people have appreciated the things that I've made, and that I've gotten to make things with people that I love and care about and respect. And that's kind of like my whole work mantra. So yeah, that's it.
So let's touch base real quick here on this print and play style prototype we've got in front of us, because you have another project coming down the road, not with CMON. You're going to be doing the very first board game. This has been the last 2 years of your life or so. The very first board game coming from Trayz, which are known for probably every time you open a cardboard box and look inside and think, oh, wow, that's nice. I'm really glad that's inside there to help me organize all my chits, tokens, and cards. There's probably a stamp somewhere on that says Trayz. But they're stepping into the board game market space, first with your design and kind of production acumen, and combining that with their insane level of creativity when it comes to the way that you stylize and create inserts that can be incorporated into the gameplay experience itself. And this is going to be taken to the nth degree. Like, we're working with paper print and plays here, but the final copy that you've shown me that's currently being produced for the prototype stuff that we're going to show off in the channel is going to be full of, like, interlocking mechanics and, like, holsters where you put your weapons and little chits that track different areas and a dice tray that's just absolutely insane. Give us the 60-second spiel on what this game is and what it's trying to do.
Do you want me to do it?
You go for it. It's you.
So, sorry. Effectively this is a sandbox style game. It's kind of a sci-fi, post-apocalyptic almost. It's got a little touch of Western to it, I think. The Mandalorian was the start point for really where I wanted to make the game. It's highly narrative. You have a character. Your character has story paths.
What's the name of this game, by the way?
Forsaken.
We should probably say that.
Forsaken.
Probably. I was waiting for
Forsaken
you
from
to introduce
Trayz Lab. Yeah. So it's massive. It's got a really nice mechanical element to it where you're doing some card management and tableau management. There's tons of ways to score points and do interesting things, and the world kind of grows around you as you've played it twice now.
I've got you here.
You do it. You do a better job. I'm not a
Forsaken's going to be an open world adventure game where you're given a personal narrative for each one of the varied asymmetric characters that you have. There'll be, I believe, in the base game a total of 6 potential narrative journeys you can go through, and those will start branching off as you play and explore various different elements of your character's narrative. Now, those narratives are going to tie to the 3 core planets we have here, planets that were once exhausted, stripped for resources, and then completely abandoned by the overworld, meaning you're in a vagabond, western, or post-apocalyptic environment where anything can happen, and things are oddly going to go wrong, believe it or not. You have outlaws that are trying to escape the planet, chaos happening on the planet's surface, and all you're trying to do is align with factions, complete objectives and missions, go down your personal story which intersects with each one of these intersecting planets, and of course, keep anyone else from scoring or completing their story before you do. The driving endgame is going to be 15 victory points or getting to the end of your own through line, which will be 3 chapters long. Your average game will take somewhere between maybe an hour and a half to about 2.5 hours, depending on how many players you have and how invested you are in the story. The thing that makes this unique is going to be the fact that you have this open world adventure set in the framework of, well, one of your varied characters. Combine that with interesting tableau building and a real core mechanic system that allows you to continue telling the story while also branching off in literally any direction to score the points you need to clinch the victory. And that is going to be
Forsaken.
Forsaken.
Wow. I just want to say the name and you do the rest. That's good.
I got it. I can do that for the rest
good.
of the answers in this conversation.
Well, and the other, I mean, and obviously too.
That's 3 years of practicing talking about games.
the thing that is obviously really important is the brain behind Game Trayz. Noah is. He's shown the world how he can help you store your game in a really interesting way, but he hasn't made a game that integrates his engineering thoughtfully into the design, and this has that all over it.
So, let's jump back to what people clicked on for this video.
Yes.
Right? Board games as a business, or the business of board games. And let's start by talking about, from our own personal journeys into this space, I've got 2 questions. I want us to each establish the through line, which the type of work that we're talking about, what we believe we can represent, and then I want to talk about what's been the maybe best part about entering the industry, and maybe one of the most challenging parts, like the thing that we've had to deal with or struggle with along the way, because there's a lot of other people coming into this space and a lot of other people trying to make this leap or this journey forward, right? So starting for myself, I believe I can talk about content creation, marketing, both on a publisher side, on a person who's running like a YouTube or any sort of social media channel side. I have a history of media production, so when it comes to art, videography, commercial type work, that's sort of the area that I'm good at. I'm good at documentary style storytelling. It's what my college degree was in, film and media production with a focus on nonprofit marketing, how you tell a genuine and honest story in a way that still conveys kind of the intended message or still conveys sort of the cause behind the action that you're taking. And so that's sort of my lens. What sort of seats do you think you guys are talking about?
For me, my goal is finding a way to create, a win-win situation, bringing the content creator and the publisher together and making sure that that exchange is something that is going to be meaningful and valuable for both sides. The content creator in terms of growing the channel and bringing games to their audience that's going to be valuable content for them, and for the publisher, helping them promote their games in the most positive light possible. So finding a way to bring those people together in a space and being the liaison is kind of my goal. Doing it in an organized, professional way. There's a lot of just little details that have to be managed, and that's my job, is to kind of create that opportunity and make it as smooth and seamless as possible.
Yeah, it's kind of an interesting position because you come at it from the lens of an obligation to the publisher, right? Like you're trying to get their product in front of the right eyes, get their product in the right hands, and display it the best that it can be. And then I kind of have both the relationship with the publishers as clients and people that I work for and admire and love this hobby because of. But then also like this other strong side of it, where as a content creator, we also have a heavy obligation to our fan base with the way that we communicate with them and the type of products we put in front of them. So we have a cool intersect there. And then as far as your lane, what are you?
Oh boy.
What's your bridge? I mean, you've got a whole cacophony of things.
Yeah, I mean, so it's obviously changed for me over the years. I think I spent a really long time. I've always wanted to make things, and making things, it's like I'm compelled to make things, and I really, almost in a childlike way, need to be extremely in love and excited by the stuff that I'm doing. And this sounds like such a non-adult comment. I don't like spending time doing things that I don't enjoy.
Oh, I love that statement.
At all. I don't want to do...
I'm horrible at it.
Oh, yeah. It's great when tax season rolls around. So...
Dude.
Just hide in a
My
hole.
tax guy literally, I think, despises me if he wasn't so nice.
Oh, I'm terrible when it comes to that stuff. But I love making things. I love kind of creating worlds. Personally, I like to... There's little love letters... So I like to kind of put little love letters, little Easter eggs, like a repository for things. Most of the games that I've worked on are that. They're like, oh, this is like, my very first game was like a love letter built deck and the cyberpunk role-playing game.
Sure.
So I enjoy that, trying to kind of give credit where credit's due, even if it's in kind of a, not super obvious way in the stuff that I make. And the other part of what I really like to do is I really like collaborating. Like I said earlier, I was a musician. I love working with people. I think people are everything. I think people are what make the world worth living in. And I've been very fortunate that I've gotten to make this almost 10-year journey with people that I care about. Like Lindsay, like Nick, my developer, Chris Ham, the people really cool people I work with at CMON. So I'm super lucky. Like I've made so many great friends. I've been able to afford people opportunities. I knew, as Lindsay mentioned, I knew that her and Tom were I just knew that it would be awesome. And it was, and it worked out just like I thought it would be, or like I thought it would. And so that's like a superpower I have, and I want to use that for good. So for me, it's kind of like creative and personal stuff. It's not really, like, to me, things like, I don't really care anymore about, of course I want the games that I make to make money, and I want the games that I make for people to like them and thumb them and all, leave nice comments and put numbers and stuff on them that are higher than 5. But at the end of the day, I think there's it's a much more personal thing for me.
And you've taken the role of designer, developer, publisher, in your current capacity, you're sort of kind of straddling the line between a few of those elements in a way.
Yeah, I've got an interesting background because I did the self-publishing, and once you have those skills, you use them, right? Like, because you can and because they're there. So even at CMON, like, our process is really cool in that we work a lot with the people who do the art and the production. So there's the way that we design is very interconnected. So it's a really neat process, and it really is. And once again, it's like very collaborative. So I've worn a lot of hats, and that's afforded me opportunities and made it so people tolerate me.
And then the other interesting thing I think is, like, I entered this space through the RPG world as someone who like tried out D&D because of Critical Role, fell in love with Kingdom Death because I wanted something that didn't need a DM because I was always the DM.
Sure.
And then just got absorbed in board games and kind of needed to justify that by leveraging a channel. You've been a consumer as well, a fan of the hobby, writing love letters to this industry that you like through the games that you design. And then, Lindsay, you didn't know much about board games at all, and so you've had this journey where you came actually into this hobby space as a professional who was adding a voice to kind of this chaos that we have, but through that course over the last three years or so, right? 3 or 4 years.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Through the last 4 years, you've been also learning and exploring the hobby. So we all have we have sort of the liaison between publisher and creator. We have a creator over here. We have a publisher here. We all kind of sit in different seats a little bit. And then beyond that, we have someone who's a little bit more new to the hobby, someone that came from an adjacent side of the hobby, and someone that I think, as far as I've read,
I've been in gaming,
stumbled in and just have lived here, right?
Yeah, I've loved gaming. Even when I was a musician, like, the guys would go out and go drinking, and I would draft Magic online in the hotel.
Yeah. So I think it's cool. I think there's a lot of different seats that are represented in this conversation. Mm-hmm. So the easiest and some of the best, not the easiest, some of the best stuff that we've discovered around entering this hobby space, and then some of the worst stuff we've discovered. And I'll start with just two, and then we'll see where the conversation goes. But let's start the conversation on some of the best stuff that we've discovered. The community that I was pursuing outside of board gaming, the community that I fell in love with when I discovered board gaming, is 100% the community that I found while building and being here in gaming. I don't know if there's anything that I'm more grateful for when it comes to Quackalope and everything we've done over the course of the last period of time than like the fans that we've been able to meet, the friends that I've been able to invite who literally were just like people that watch the channel that were like, hey, I'll drive up 5 hours. Like West is a common guest on the show he's like, hey, I'll drive up every other Tuesday, 5-hour sprint to come spend an afternoon with you playing games. Like that's to me so cool, and that is exemplary of so many of the different types of people we have in this space. We have weird, dorky, geeky nerds who are a little bit socially awkward, who have their own quirks, and once you push past that gap and we all come together because of gaming, it's a really cool hobby space to be in. And that extends to people who are welcomed into the space, because I think there's a group of people that want to kind of rally around you. It extends to like publishers who are trying to make like their little dream come to life. No one's really in board gaming, as far as our industry goes and the people I interact with, no one is really in board gaming because they just kind of want to like make a ton of money in board gaming, or they just want a job that's an 8 to 5 or a 9 to 5 and they want to forget about it when they go home. Like they go home and they play games.
I wanted to make A money.
A money would be nice.
I made A money.
And A money would be nice.
I made A money. Yeah.
But you didn't enter the space solely on that.
No, I paid.
And even now, you're kind of saying, like, I made A money, and then I realized that I kind of also just loved making games.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's more, like we've all talked about this, we were talking about this before the camera came on, this ability to have freedom to do things, to have employees that are extremely understanding, and or to be self-employed entirely. Mm-hmm. I mean, I've been self-employed. I now work for a large organization, and there's amazing benefits to both, but the consistent thing between it is there's like a lot of freedom. I have a lot of trust from the people at CMON. Like they trust me and they let me do things. Obviously I do them I draw within the lines as best I can, but they're very supportive of the things that I want to do, how I go about them. I got to hire the developer that I wanted to hire. Mm-hmm. I hired another person that I wanted to hire. So there's a tremendous amount of trust there, and that helps, sure. That means a lot more to me than money.
Have you found that as a feature in the board game space?
Yeah, I mean,
would you say that's an industry thing?
I think so. I think the thing that's really unique about this industry is a lot of the people who run businesses, it starts with a person who has an idea or a drive, and they create something, and then a business kind of grows out around them. Mm. In some instances, those people they don't have necessarily professional acumen, but they learn it.
Like, outside of publishers, Tom would be an amazing example of an individual who, like, kind of built a lot of what we're all benefiting from. Now, like, I watched I forget the conversation video he did, though, but he did this conversation video talking, I think it was with Rodney, talking about the beginning of the industry. And sorry for stealing this from you a bit, but, like,
no, not at all.
Like, this is an individual who started as a hobbyist back when, like, YouTube was a thing and board games didn't really exist on it. And the fact that I'm stepping into a space where I can find an audience, I can have a platform, I can play these insane games, like Mr. Vassal's been there almost every step of the way as our space has expanded, and is to credit for a lot of that.
Yeah.
Which is so cool.
I mean, he was doing it before he even, they were podcasts in Korea, when he was just, there doing teaching and, fulfilling roles of being a father and other, things that he had going on. It was just a side thing that grew slowly because of his love.
So you're right. It's this, like, it starts as one person that's like, I love this, and then it kind of blooms into a thing, and that thing now exists, and that's like our whole space. It's a mushroom cloud is what I'm getting to.
Yeah, so what's interesting is it's a creator-driven industry where a lot of the people, I think we were kind of talking about this earlier when we were having dinner, the professional decorum in this industry is very different than in other industries. The professional expectations is very different. That isn't to say that they're lower or higher. In some instances, maybe, but mostly what it is I think it's a lot of people who really care about the things that they're doing. There's a higher degree of personal investment. There's a higher degree of personal stake.
Yeah.
And I think from that you have people who are caring. They're not just kind of making a doodad and selling a doodad. Like I know I said doodad. I'm sorry. I'm 44, not 104.
They're not selling fidget spinners.
Yeah, they're not selling, a widget or a Tamagotchi.
Thingamabob.
But no, I find that really interesting. And I was absolutely one of those people. My first game I did with a publisher, it did not do well. I was the biggest prima donna nightmare, creator you could possibly think to work with. I thought I could do better. And I did.
Yeah.
So we launched a game, and it was our first try.
Yeah?
Yeah, me and Nick and a really good friend of ours, Brian.
I don't mean that. I meant it took, you thought you could do better off that first one. And then it took time to also get to the point where you launched the next one.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. The first 2 years I did this, I lived off my savings. The first year I made money, I made $16,000. And that was after having a $140,000 campaign in 2014, which back then $140,000 was like a lot. And then the next year I did a little better, and then the year after that we sold the company, and then from there I was like, wow, I can actually do this. I can actually pay my bills and take care of my kid.
So Lindsay, from your sense of things, coming from more of a professional world, instead of us vagabonds, what has it been like stepping into a space that is kind of oddly creator driven? Like we're the type of people that turn into these mushrooms that then need your support, because we can't function without we can't function without people that know how to run businesses. What's been the positive about the board game space?
Well, I think because, and I've worn a lot of hats in the corporate world. I didn't always do banking. Banking was something I stumbled into because I needed a job and I had administrative experience that I was able to build on. So for that, it was an easy next step for me. I got my degree in creative writing.
Oh, cool.
So I wanted to be a writer, but in order to be a writer, it's a lot of work, it's a lot of rejection, it's a lot of just, submitting manuscripts and getting rejected. And, at that point in my life, I had 2 children. I was a single mom. And so banking was bread and butter for me, but it wasn't what I had dreamed of becoming. So having the opportunity to come into something that's more creative, more fluid, and really welcoming is a positive. And I could see this is a community. And a lot of doors opened up for me because, you don't have to, wake up and wear a certain uniform. When you go into a corporate environment, you're expected to kind of dress a certain way, adopt a certain persona. It's about the bottom line. There's a certain walk and talk. You have to fit a certain, mold. And if you don't fit that mold, then you're not going to be promoted as quickly. It's just kind of, climbing the ladder in a sense. And with this, I really appreciated that it's really, people are just so welcoming. You don't have to look a certain way. You don't have to, wear certain things. You can be a little awkward. You can be a little shy. And people will still sit down with you. You can be old, young. I can play games with my kids. And that's really created a lot of really wonderful opportunities to, have meaningful conversations with people who I never thought I would sit down with and play a game. One of my very first games that I ever played was Feast for Odin, and I didn't even know what I was getting into.
That's the intro? Where did you guys learn to walk people into the hobby?
She just was talking to a guy at Geekway, and he's like, "You want to play Feast for Odin?" And she's like, "Sure."
Nice.
So, and I thought to myself when I was sitting at the table, I had probably played Splendor and maybe Ticket to Ride at that point. So I did not know the deep end that I was diving into, but here I am like, okay, I'm just going to throw it all out there. And I got through it. It was a little uncomfortable, but I thought to myself, who's this person who I don't know, who I just met, who's willing to sit down and talk me through this.
Yeah.
And I thought, how wonderful, because, how could I have ever arrived there by going to, you know, a business convention and sit down with people who would be so welcoming and kind to me. So again, like kind of just echoing what you said, is just all the opportunities for meeting wonderful people who are really there because they actually, you know, just love the game and the sense of community around what this industry brings.
So the negative. So the stuff that's rough about this industry, and like I could, you know, this could probably be a
The
whole
fan mail.
additional.
Terrible.
Speaking of
so
which,
much.
I think we are actually going to, if you've been paying attention, I think we're going to end up getting a PO box just so I can do one of my favorite types of YouTube content is just the people that open whatever people send them on camera.
Oh, that's great.
Nice.
So I think we're planning on getting a PO box just to see.
Yeah.
Great.
Okay.
Which will be fun. Either way, some of the negatives. So for me, there's two things that I think for me are really probably some of the stuff that I wish I never really ran into in the industry. First and foremost would be we are such a small space and everyone knows everyone.
Mm-hmm.
And there's not really a lot of room to like go into your own lane and just be successful and exist there. And you can to some degree, but it's an interesting creator-driven industry where even the fans know the personal drama of publishers and even like content creators know like what other content creators are doing and who's talking and this kind of interspersed bubble. And I'm excited to watch the industry as it grows and as we keep lifting like more and more people up to bigger and bigger platforms and we kind of have these hybrid zones that branch off. But it's an interesting space that sometimes gets really almost too personal if you're talking about it in a professional setting. Because when I was a photographer, like personal feelings never came into it. I was either a good event photographer or I wasn't. And I could be charitable and kind and nice and all of that, but when it comes down to the shoot day, like I show up with my camera and I do my job.
Yeah.
And then I go home and I send the client the photos and that doesn't matter. And here it's a thing where like if someone misunderstands a text or an email gets missed and it starts being a bit more of a conversation. And I don't love that about our space. And so that's one big element. And then the other element, the part that I never realized until I got into this, probably the first year I was blind to it, and then it started becoming clearly obvious as I watched companies try and fail. A lot of people put a lot of stake on what they're trying to make because there's like you said, this is an industry that has a lot of people that are putting in their heart and their passion, and it's high risk for them. And I've seen people, you made $16,000 on your first year in here. Like after 2 years, your first profitable year was $16,000. I've watched the people that spent 2 years and didn't make anything, and they lost their savings. I've seen people that like went into, especially over this last year with COVID, made $500,000 on Kickstarter. And after 4 years of heart and soul and amazing work on an incredible game, all three of them didn't walk away with a paycheck. Mm-hmm. And that, to me, is someone who believes in the value of work and believes in the individuals that are creating the product. I don't like seeing, and I don't think our industry should be seeing individuals that are making games that are selling for 5 times their value on eBay, not bringing any of that home. Like, that sucks to me, and it's heartbreaking to me. I see you scrunching your face, but, like, that hurts me. I don't know.
I mean, so, to go back to the point that I made earlier about this kind of little homogenous process from creator to business person, there are a lot of people who just... having business acumen is a skill set, right? Yeah.
It's different from
being a creator, it does not mean that you are equipped. So, a lot of the times, in some of these instances... there are poor administrative decisions that are being made.
Yeah.
And when we had Action Phase, our first company, we had a friend of mine he owned his own company. He owned a marketing company with like clients like the Super Bowl, Walmart. Mm-hmm. And if he wasn't there, oh my God, I am incapable of all this stuff. I mean, Lindsay is... I am like ready to run off a cliff like a lemming when it comes to that type of stuff, which is part of why I don't want to run a studio anymore. I want to be an employee for a place where there's security and a reputation and all
Sure.
that great stuff. So I think there is, to a degree of that, I mean, I understand what you're saying. It's unfortunate, but there are people who are, we were talking about this earlier, like people who They don't do the legwork. They don't do the research. They're just like, oh, well, I saw this person do this and that they did well. So if I just do what they did, then I'll also be successful.
I just think for myself, I am saddened when I see people pursuing their dreams, whether or not they have the acumen or ability to accomplish them. I see more people pursuing and failing than I have seen in most other industries I've worked in.
Well, a lot
and
of
that to me, emotionally, like I see myself in them, and it hurts. Like every time I see someone that has to like close a company or go back to work full time or spend their life savings on something, I, as someone who has been known to step out and take risks, understands what that feels like.
This is a hard industry. The margins are not great. It's as being a drummer and doing this, it's very similar. You don't get to choose if you're popular.
Yeah.
I've made games that I was like, oh my God, this is gonna be it, and it limped across the finish line. I'm like, holy crap, what the heck? And like, I can't tell you, most of the time, there's times where I look at things and I'm like, why did this game make so much money? Why did this one not?
So what's been the from your side of things? What's been the hard stuff, the negative stuff?
Coughing. I'm sorry. I know you have to edit that out. Yeah, tuberculosis has been it's been a big part of my life.
Health insurance, lack of
health insurance.
I didn't have that as a photographer anyway.
Dogwoods.
Okay, so yeah.
Dogwood tree blooms. For me, yeah, man, lots of struggles, lots. I got a big mouth on me, so I have personal struggles, playing well with others, being a walking liability. No, I think like a big part of it is hard to make things when you're on the creator side of things. I've had a lot of career jealousy, like, and I don't like that. That's something that I've had to like.
What do you mean by that?
I've seen people do well, and I've thought, and this is something that goes back. No, I wish I looked good with a shaved head. I mean, I like you, but you're cool.
But is that like more in terms of like the industry, not maybe necessarily?
It's a creative thing, right? Like you're competing against a lot of people. So like one of the things you have to be able to do this job is you have to accept a couple things. You don't decide if you're successful. The public decides. When you make something for consumption, the public decides if that is Arc Nova or Lost Ruins of Arnak, and you get to skyrocket into the, or Gloomhaven. I mean, Isaac Childress was in the same design group. I saw that game and I was like, get out of town. We offered Isaac to come work with us at Action Phase. He's like, I think I can do better. And I'm like, you can't. At a Denny's. And boy, was I wrong. And I mean, I told Isaac in 2019 at PAX Unplugged, I'm like, I have been so horribly jealous of you for years.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I just want to say it and get it out of the way. Sorry, you're awesome. The thing that you've achieved is amazing. I mean, it's really amazing. And so, yeah, we all think that the things that we're doing are the best. We think all the things that we're making is the best. But there's so many really talented people out there. And there's luck involved. And, to your point, and we kind of touched on this.
Is Boardgames a Euro game or an Ameritrash game?
Sure, but, the public can be vicious. It's really frustrating as a creator to work on something for 2 years and then have a person who's played it for 5 minutes tell you what's wrong with it. And to say like, well, I've worked on 200 games, you've worked on 0 games, and you just wrote a 90-page diatribe on BGG deriding every decision I've made without any context.
Yeah.
That stuff, it doesn't bother me as much as it used to, but
definitely gets to you.
A couple times a year I'll kind of, cry into my kerchief. And that stuff's kind of hard. But, I mean, most of the struggles, I think there's a lot of truth to what you said. It's hard when you see people you care about that are trying really hard and really, like, giving their best effort, and in spite of that are not getting to where they want to be.
Yeah.
It's a crowded space. The accessibility to technology, things like crowdfunding websites and stuff, it really creates this assumption that you're going to, well, all these people are doing it. Like, look at all these people who made this. My thing has to be as good as theirs. And then dreams crushed, second mortgage. You know,
Yeah.
like it's that is very true what you said.
I absolutely know that story. What do you think? What's been some of the challenging or negative stuff in this space? Because every industry has it, you know.
Yeah. Well, it's a double-edged sword, right? Because
Don't say that. She's making fun of me from when I was 15.
no.
What about my broadsword?
I said that to her once in a letter when
That's a
we've known
double-edged
each other since we were kids. I said it's a double-edged sword. I'm gonna start saying that. It sounds cool.
No, I truly mean that. I mean, there might have been a little jab there, but the thing that is the industry can be very welcoming, but and open and kind. But the flip side of that is there's opportunity, but there's also lack of professionalism. Like, you know, the thing that I'm
Sure.
like I love is that I don't have to wear the pantyhose. I don't have to like look polished, and my boss isn't asking me, you know, where my TPS report is. But you know, a lot of us don't have health insurance. We have to find that from other sources, and hopefully we have a partner who can provide us with health insurance. People are not getting paid what they deserve because a lot of people are doing these on shoestring budgets. They hope and pray and they promise that, you know, when I have the money, just in a couple of years after these next couple of games, I'm going to be able to give you what you deserve. So there's been, people have been willing to make sacrifices because they love what they do.
I mean, we were just having the conversation this afternoon. I've told, like, Devin, for instance, who fans of this channel will recognize.
Right.
Like, we pay him part-time right now. And basically what I've said is, like, hey, in about 2 to 3 years,
right.
I can bring you on full-time. That's a weird promise to make someone for their next 2 to 3 years.
It's a common promise in this industry.
It's so common.
Very common.
It's a leap of faith, though, because I was in a similar position with Tom 4 years ago where, you know, I had to make that decision. I'm going to have to take a pay cut because Tom's still growing. He's got a family. He's got his employees that he already has on the channel. Can I afford to take a pay cut, trim, cut corners where I have, but still be able to pay my mortgage and have health insurance and take care of my children, but also on the promise that, you know, this could grow into something. So there's a lot of risk there, which is in every industry, but this one in particular, because there's a lack of some of these things that have been set up and formalized in other industries that people can rely on. Because that's not there can be opportunities for people to exploit people, and you just have to be aware of that and advocate for yourself where you can, because some people are willing to take little to nothing for their work, hoping for a payoff down the road, which may or may not ever come. So, you know, and I think that people have good intentions, but sometimes, you know, you're really like that next game or that next Kickstarter away from saying, if you're a boss, can you afford to pay your employees when you can barely afford to pay, you know, your own mortgage? So there's a risk involved there, and I think that people just have to be aware of that when they're making the decision if they're going to take a chance. That risk is there, and you have to, you know, make sure that you're not putting all your eggs in one basket. Maybe you have a side job, or, you know, you do something in order to support yourself so that if, you know, that risk doesn't pay off, you haven't, you know, put everything into it.
So a little experiment that I think will be interesting from the different perspectives that we have. I'm going to go through a few of the different categories of people that might be pursuing a job in this space or curious about this space at all. And let's, from our perspective, give them the, like, brutal, truthful advice that they should probably hear going into this. So let's start with, like, the thing that the two categories that people always want to be. It's either content creator or publisher, like designer/publisher, right? And then we've got new publishers, established publishers. We've got designers, like not publishers, just designers, right? So we've got media, and then those four. Any other major categories we can think of?
I think marketing, media. I mean, like social media marketing
is
advertising.
That's a big area for.
That's like the unicorn position in gaming that, like, everyone's having the hardest time as publishers finding people that
for the publishers themselves.
What she does is because the people who are of that acumen, their wage expectation is so high, and so often the publishers do the opposite. They're like, well, I'll get a young person who's active on social media, and they know the platform.
But they don't come with the professionalism all the time.
No.
Okay, so let's do this. Let's break it down. So let's start with the category of a brand new publisher / designer. Someone that's got their first game. Maybe they've been working on it for a year or two, and they're trying to launch a Kickstarter, get established in the space, and let's try to give a little bit of reassuring advice and a little bit of like, let's knock the kneecaps out of every category of this, because they really, like, you shouldn't go into this space blind. So from my side of things, the reassuring advice to someone who is trying to be a first-time publisher or first-time creator is this is a really cool, supportive community that's small enough that you think you can probably actually make a name in this space. If you've got a cool title, some awesome artwork, or a crazy design, and find that little pocket or that fan base that wants to support what you do, it takes like 2,000 to 3,000 people for a first project to be noticeable, which is shockingly less than a space like the video game industry or writing and publishing your first novel. Like, you can get your name in the door pretty accessibly. That being said, you should probably not do what you're trying to do, because almost everyone who is trying over the course of the last 3 years that I've seen is still either trying or out of the industry. It's very rare that people find their niche or find their audience. And even the ones that I know of that are established and you look at as saying they've made it, like booth at every convention, retail games, like multiple projects funded, close to or over $1 million in Kickstarter, a lot of them are still struggling with that bottom line of production demands and logistics of running a business overwhelm the value or the money they've been able to make while creating content. You're really genuinely risking the last 3 years of your life, your savings, your house, if you're willing to mortgage it to pursue your dreams, and whatever stability or security your family has. And that is not always a risk that's worth taking. And I mean that. Like, I genuinely think if you're just starting in this space, I think you should go talk to established publishers and probably not try to do it yourself. Unless you're Isaac, apparently. Thoughts? Brand new, first-time designer, first-time publisher.
Gosh. I mean, so the last time I got asked to do a panel, it was on how to be a publisher, and it was my turn to speak. I said, they go, what's your advice? I said, don't do it.
Yeah.
You'll fail. And then some people got up and left, and then they came back around
really?
to me. And they asked me some more questions.
I love that.
Some more people got
up
and
the right
left.
thing.
And then I never was asked to be on a panel ever again on that topic.
Until Quackalope.
Until today,
Yeah.
Yes.
What do you think?
I agree with pretty much everything you said. I think there's a perpetual, ocean of examples of people putting up content. Go on Kickstarter any Tuesday and watch, the circus. Like, it's there. You can look, you can learn. I mean, if you are a observant and disciplined person and you take the time to actually look at what things are performing well and try to approximate why, I think that can go a long way. However, like I said, you don't get to decide. You could have the best artwork. You could have the most original game. I just went and saw Neil Gaiman, the author, speak a few nights ago, and he said that the best writers he's ever met in his life have not had more than 200 people ever read their work. And he said that some of those people, if they do it for long enough, maybe, just maybe, they'll find an audience, but most will go to the grave without anyone understanding or appreciating their work. A lot of it is luck. A lot of it is genuinely just luck. And then those people who are in that category that get to where he got to, it's simply perseverance.
Yeah.
Right? I agree. I think that there are a lot of people who are very optimistic about this industry. And my biggest thing that I can tell you as a person who's run 2 studios is there is a massive difference between creating a game and running a business. The moment you take people's money on Kickstarter, you stop being a game designer and you start being an entrepreneur, and it is rife with, I have to pay for barcodes.
Sure.
I have to make sure that the licensing rights for this thing that I thought was public domain, but actually is owned by a weird whiskey company in Montana, doesn't sue the crap out of me. I have to figure out what logistics are. Oh, I didn't bother to weigh the box and all the components, but our first game 4 ounces over into the next shipping weight, $28,000 mistake.
Wow.
And that was how long ago?
2014.
Yeah.
So
It's a
imagine
different
now
season.
the multiplier.
The shipping rates increased between when we got our initial shipping projection on Kodama, and it was like a $15,000 difference, and that wasn't something we factored into the budget at all. And it was just shipping rates just increased. It's like cost of living, right? And it just went up. So there's so many fine details to running a business and to actually making the game, the materials that are there, the working with all these I mean, you are talking to people you have never met before in a foreign country who are making the thing, like the physical manifestation of your idea, and you are hoping that it gets on a boat and then it gets through customs and then it gets on a train or a truck and then it arrives somewhere and it's not a mess.
Yeah.
And oh my goodness, there are literally just like so many moments where one mistake decides your fate. Oh crap. We proofed on our first game, Heroes 1, we proofed the cards and the factory screwed up and they turned the card back upside down. And we had to do replacement cards and it was a card game, every card. So
I know a company that had custom dice where it was not supposed to be like a classic dice order. And the company went in and had already proved a few cycles of it, and right before, like on manufactured printing, went, oh, they don't have the classic dice layout. They must have done that wrong, and fixed it for them.
wow.
Oops.
It's a thing.
It's really hard, and like your chances of success are really low. And I
Yeah.
hate to say that because it's dream crushing. I think I think a good way to cut your teeth on this is exactly what you said, which is to go find people who have a reputation and have experience and try to work with them and learn what you can by going through the process in the traditional way. So many people, that's the thing. It's beautiful that we have the ability to just shortcut the traditional publishing, traditions, standards, whatever. But that's also really bad because it's like a lot of these people that are doing this for a living and have been doing it for a long time, it's because they know what they're doing. To just come in and assume that you know.
You're betting on a dozen people that.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. So and those people, I mean, I can't think of publishers that I don't like. I mean, they're all nice. They're all generous. They're all like really kind and are willing to give you time and talk to you about things. So it's less money to design. I mean, you're talking about you could spend years of your life and make just a few $1,000s or nothing. But rather you don't have all the risk. I mean, there's a real potential that you could put a lot of time and get nothing out of it, or worse, end up losing money on this, and that's pretty scary prospect.
Yeah. Lindsay, what are your thoughts for a new designer, new publisher, the things you warn them against and encourage them for?
I mean, for me, I see a lot of these first-time publishers coming through that are looking to monetize. They want to do some advertising, and I can, you can sometimes tell some of these publishers get it right and they're lucky, and you're like, wow, this is your first game. It looks amazing. The art. Usually these people have a marketing background. They have been doing this maybe in a different capacity. So I would say if you are from a professional industry, like you've been working for marketing, or you really, you're an illustrator, you've been doing some sort of this in another capacity for a number of years, you still need to have the contacts in the industry and really learn the back end of the stuff that isn't fun and glamorous. But it's sometimes it's heartbreaking because I'm looking at these games and I'm like, okay, well, how many people do you have on social media? How many followers do you have? Let me see your rule book. And it's not that I'm trying to judge them, but you can pretty much tell if their game is going to fund or not. And it's hard to let those people down and say, I really think you need to spend more time marketing and getting your game ready, because it's not even like if your game isn't flawless and market ready, then you're not going to be able to convince a very critical public that your game is gonna be able to ship and it's gonna actually deliver and have everything that you're hoping. I think people they fall in love with their product and they don't have the ability to have that objectivity of, oh, well, maybe my game isn't as perfect and beautiful. They say, is it Faulkner, the writer, who says, kill your darlings? Because you have to be willing to take feedback and incorporate it into the many, many, many versions of the game that you're going to have. And that's just to get it ready, just for it to be a solid game and have all the marketing. There's just so many components that you have to be able to hit, on top of having somebody who knows manufacturing, making sure that you can get through fulfillment and all of the things that are going to come your way that you have to be able to manage. So again, it goes back to doing your homework. But I don't want to be so discouraging to tell people don't follow your dreams. You just have to be prepared. You have to be prepared, and you have to go in with open eyes and not naive to this idea that it's going to be an easy dream, because it's not easy. It is a lot of hard work, but it's possible, and you have to be willing to open up your own doors, not ask for people to open them up for you, because I think I see a lot of people with this sense of like, well, I did these things. Well, where are the people? Why didn't they show up? Well, how many doors did you knock on? You can't just go up to one person, one content person, and expect them to do all of your hard work for you. You have to show up and have done a lot of the work and a lot of the heavy lifting before you even get to the person to have the conversation. So
you guys are in a really awkward position because people have the expectation that if they work with you or pay you,
so I was
guarantees success.
Right, exactly.
I was about to jump on that. We at Quackalope have like some weird approaches that we take. Like when I'm on the phone with someone who's a new publisher, I'll sit down and have a conversation with them. I'll be like, hey, how many people do you need to back this game? What are your numbers? Like you're saying, I checked your social media and you haven't been active for the past 3 months. Like you have 30 followers. I'm not your success.
Right.
My audience won't show up for you. I have a smart audience. I really do. I've got people that if I was posting up a game that was just terrible, it won't do anything. I'll get 3 people backing your game, and it's just not worth any time investment. And so, like, we've kind of bridged and taken a weird step with what we do here for the most part. And you can always find exceptions to the rule and things that slip by, but for the most part, I do not and will not charge small publishers, like first-time publishers, for coverage. For the pure reason that I expect them to fail, and I don't want to really be on their red card. But I'm perfectly happy charging larger companies because I expect them to succeed, and I also think my time is valuable, and I put a lot of effort into what I do, right?
Sure.
So we have this weird balance. But the counter to that is, with first-time publishers, it's a lot harder than it's ever been to get onto Quackalope. And I want to be the type of creator that's discovering and shouting about something and excited about something and making a company, like, exist. But I have no power unless they bring me something that has an audience behind it, that has amazing artwork, that has great design, and that has some type of love and support from the community around the creator themselves.
Right.
And if I can leverage myself to help that, that's awesome. Townsfolk Tussle is a great example. Like, when they first went to launch, like, I was talking to them on the phone, and I was like, listen, I think you all are incredible. You've worked the last 3 years of your life to create and pull this together. And I'm not going to charge you, even though I think you're going to do amazing on Kickstarter. And the reason I'm not charging you is because, one, that's not how our policy works with first-timers, because I think it's going to be hard. And guess what? The pandemic hit, and it was really hard for them. And I can't wait for them to relaunch because I want them to reap the rewards of what they've created. But then on top of that, there was this other element where I was like, I want permission to go on camera and scream about your game. And I can't quite give myself permission to do that in the way that I want if I also have to put the paid preview tag in a thumbnail, right? Like there's just that little bit. Whereas if I'm covering something for Awaken Realms, people understand that Awaken Realms does good work. Guess what? Now all I need to do is tell you about the type of good work they just did.
Right.
I need to talk to you about whether or not this game is going to be right for you through gameplays, through previews, through displays. But it's going to be quality no matter what.
Right.
Bridging over to a new person, I can't promise that unless I'm able to, like, put my reputation on the line for it.
Sure.
So it's a weird puzzle. Content creators. High lows, positives, negatives for content creators in this space. How are we going to rip them apart?
The vultures that they are.
Yeah, I mean, one of the most important things we did when we first started, and one of the mistakes we might have made as we've grown, is the very first convention I went to, I heard rumors of people walking around at 500 subscribers or 1,000 subscribers, which is what I was at the time, going to every booth asking for a copy of a game. Being like, hey, I'm an Instagram, I've got 300 people on Instagram or 1,000 people on YouTube. Could I have a copy of your game to cover? Because it's fun to get cool things. Like, we love board games, so it's fun to get free board games. And one of the most valuable things I ever did was say, I'm not going to ask a single publisher for a single thing today. I'm going to walk around, I'm going to shake every single hand at every single booth at this convention, pre-COVID, right? I'm going to shake every single hand, and I'm going to look them in the face, and I'm going to talk to them. I'm going to say, hey, name's Jesse Anderson, I run Quackalope, small little like upstart, you know what like Duck with Horns is. We do this in the board game space. I come from a professional background. Not asking for anything. I just wanted to take 30 seconds to say hi, let you know who I am, and I'll see you next year. Like, that was my pitch. And I did that with every single person in the room. And next year I had 10,000 subscribers. And then when I walked up, they'd been following along, and they knew who I was a little bit more. And we still apply the same logic. Now we ask for more games, because I also love board games, and we've got a lot more of a platform, and I think we can justify it. Along with the side that I probably shouldn't ask for any games, because we've also way outgrown what we're able to handle. And it's been a blessing and a curse, but like, I'm sure there's publishers out there that are like, oh, we sent Quackalope a game, even though, I mean, games are not valuable to publishers in the least. They're like $10 when it comes to manufacturing. Some fancy games with shipping are like $20, $25, but like, there's some people out there that I'm sure I'm like, hey, we mailed Quackalope $15, and he never covered our title. So we're upset at him. And I'm like, that's fair. That's a fair criticism. We bit off way more than we could chew. I juggle 30 balls, and I drop about 8 of them. But the 22 that I keep up are really good. Like,
whoa,
valuable.
That's a lot.
I know. Yeah, it's pretty decent, As far as content creation goes beyond that, people need to be purposeful about it. And they need to be purposeful about it in a way that isn't just a hobby space anymore. Like, you can start a channel and get 500 subscribers just by treating it as a thing you do on the weekend. And maybe that'll work. But most people that are entering and succeeding in this space are doing so and at some point actually decide to buckle down. They decide to invest in technology. They decide to invest in classes to learn about how to speak online, how to create B-roll, how to edit video clips, how to get nice quality audio. And if you don't take that type of approach to it, the odds are in our space, there's just not a lot of room to grow, and there's not a lot of room to grow upwards. There's very few people at the top of our industry, and there's a whole lot of people that have been stuck at limbo in the center and just not moved for years, or not moved in a significant degree for years. So like, as we cross 20,000 subscribers and 30,000 subscribers, and right now as we're sitting at close to 40, I'm constantly looking at how I can reinvent what we're doing, attract a new or better audience, and always a little petrified that I'm going to just kind of pause. We're going to hit the ceiling of what Quackalope can do in the space. And if I feel like if I don't constantly reinvent the wheel and try to lean into what we've done best and do it better, that's exactly what will happen. And if you're not willing to put in I've worked 80 hours a week for 3 years straight. And it's worth every penny of it. But for some people, that's like not what you're willing to do. So, content creation.
I like influencers.
Yeah?
Yeah, I really do. I think they're cool. No, I'm not just saying that. Like, I mean, I really do. Like, there's so many. I don't know that I don't like any influencers. I mean, gosh, I could think of so many people that are great that are
Alex is.
I think Alex is great.
I mean, there was a question mark at the end of that state.
Tom and Rado and Lance have all been. I mean, I would not have anything in my early days if it wasn't for them. I mean, especially people like Lance and Rado. I mean, Rado screamed Heroes Wanted from the rafters. He did it for free. He did it for free for Kodama. I mean, he did so much for me. Same thing with Lance. And, oh my gosh, I think you're great. I think Jeremy Howard's great. I think...
So what advice would
Never
you have?
bored. I mean, like, I like so many... No, I mean, like, I've just met so many people that are cool. I mean, I think the tricky thing from a publisher thing is it's a little weird. It's kind of business and pleasure mixing. Because, right, it's like, I'm going to give you something, I really need you to like.
Yeah. What's your... All right. Because I want to drill the bit just a little bit. As someone that's worked in this space, right? I have this weird juxtaposition where I do want your game. I like pretty things. I love board games. Well, this one, absolutely. No, I'm a hobbyist. I'm in this hobby because I love games. Yeah. So it's really cool to get a game in the mail. Like, that feels good. But I also put, 8 hours of work into learning, playing, filming, covering.
Yeah, a tremendous amount.
It's like, your game was worth $15 to you.
Oh, for sure.
And as a content creator, there's a lot of pressure that I constantly feel around people that I feel like I owe things to, when all they ever did was send me about $10.
Well, so the good thing about the Kickstarter is now, because of the previews, and those should cost money, I think that's an opportunity for the content creators to earn some of what they, not always, but that is an opportunity for content creators to make some money, to monetize, right? Because they need influencers to speak about it. They have a thing that doesn't exist. They need someone to talk about it in a meaningful and convincing way. Now, if I handed you a game that's already succeeded, I think there's a little bit of that, like, oh, well, here you go. Here's your, enjoy your free Spring Break Daytona 1997 t-shirt for hanging out. I don't know why I said that. That was a good year. So, yeah, I don't know. I genuinely do. The biggest thing with the content creators is them flubbing stuff, like getting rules wrong or screwing something up or phoning it in. Sometimes that can happen. Sometimes you can have someone where they get something and you can tell they're just kind of that's awful when you hand someone something and they're like, I don't really like your game, but I like you. So I'm going to grin and do my very best to be
Sure.
I'm sure you've been in that situation, right? Where you're like, man, I like this person a lot and I want them to succeed.
Not every game is great. And it's this weird balance and Alex and I have talked about this, where if you're talking with just your friends, you'd pull off to the side and you'd be like, I hate that game. But when you're talking online, I hate that game is not a nuanced discussion of a game. And it's also not true.
It's not helpful either, right?
It's what your friends' lingo knows. Yeah. And so for us, we actually try to frame things like previews or conversations in the framework of not what I personally like, but what does the game do? What does the game do well? What makes the game challenging? What will make it... We have a format called Right For You, Wrong For You. And that's a look into whether or not this game will fit onto the table for other players. Dominant Species, one of your favorite games of all time. I really like it, not my favorite game of all time, and Alex despises it. Well, we're three real board gamers.
Why doesn't he like it? He doesn't want to be a bird?
I hear. But it's one of those things where a game is not a binary good or bad. Sometimes it is. Don't get me wrong, and we don't cover those games. But oftentimes it's just, hey, I didn't actually like the randomness in this game, or the storytelling was...
Tom makes fun of... He tells me all the time, he's like, you hate popular things. And I'm like, I don't. There's just I'll play certain games and I'm like, I don't get it. Why the heck is this successful?
We try to be balanced. We try to be fair. The last thing I want is for a viewer to buy something off of what I've said and get that thing and not trust me anymore. But I also don't want to do disservice to the publishers. I don't want to go on camera and say, I hated every aspect of this game and have the publisher be like, you missed 7 of the rules, man. Yeah, the randomness sucked because you weren't supposed to. You had so much dice mitigation in there.
Yeah. No, it's interesting. I've had people do favors. Rahdo reviewed Western Legends. That is not the type of game that Rahdo reviews. It is antagonistic. There is a lot of PvP.
Sure.
There is stuff that is just feel bad in there, but he liked me enough to give it a shot, and he tried to look at it through his lens, and in his review was very much this isn't for me, but, I can see why people like this. So I have a tremendous amount of, and genuinely, I'm not trying to suck up to you, I have a tremendous amount of respect because people like me need you guys. I don't have a massive following. I'm not a super forward-facing person. I need people like you to vet the projects that I make because it makes my job a heck of a lot easier to get it out there to people.
So where do content creators go wrong? What's the biggest flub from
Daytona 97, man.
Here.
Too many body shots.
Listen, you promised me we'd never talk about that.
I know. How old were you in 97?
4.
Oh, wow.
Oh, man.
That's so adorable. I would have taken it there.
Munster.
Yeah. Yeah, you would have been a little monster. Where did they go wrong? So this kind of Lego blocks with what we were talking about, like people with these like unrealistic expectations. I've definitely seen people who are like, I charge $1,000, and I'm like, okay, but like, who are you again? Like, what do you do? Like, what? No? Like, so I think there are some people who have kind of unrealistic expectations, or like I do think that the content creators are maybe some of the more competitive people in the industry with one another. Like, it's probably because you have a visible running tally of how many people like you. It's like like your subscribers are like an accurate, estimate of like your popularity or whatever. So it's a little easier to qualify. It doesn't mean that you guys aren't nice to one another, but I mean, it's competitive in like in a healthy way. Where do they go wrong? Gosh, I don't know. You probably know better than me.
Yeah, I'd love to hear.
Yeah.
Where do
What's
they go
your
wrong?
sense of it?
I mean, I think that you have to really, first of all, people get into this with expectations. Some of them are realistic. A lot of times they're unrealistic. It looks like a lot of fun, people, but there's 80 hours of work behind that. So again, before you dive in, quit your day job, make sure that you spend the time, growing this, deciding what is your voice and how does your voice add to the conversation, because this is a small space, right? The industry is growing, but it's still a small community. So if you've got a lot of content creators, what are you bringing to the table that's new? How's your voice fresh? And decide before you really go whole hog, is this for you? Because you might get into it and say, you know what, I don't know that I want to commit this kind of time. There's a lot of stuff behind the scenes where it looks like a lot of fun because you're playing games all day, but you've got to spend the time to make the editing and all the stuff where you're wearing a lot of hats. And I think that people just need to realize that what you see on camera, there's a lot that goes into bringing that to light and making sure that you're adding to the conversation, and that you're not, going in thinking that you're going to have instant success like you see in other industries where you turn a camera on and you talk about peanut butter and jelly sandwiches and you've got all these followers all of a sudden just because peanut butter and jelly sandwiches happens to be popular that year, Yeah. So I think there's a degree of not understanding the amount of time that it takes to grow that. And then I just think developing relationships, it's kind of like, with any industry, develop relationships, take the time, don't have this go in with this expectation that, you deserve to because you're who, just because you've put in the time and work, other people have also put in the time and work ahead of you. So learn who your competitors are and study them. What are they doing that you want to learn how to be better at? Because it's all out there to consume. You can go on YouTube and watch, and learn about anybody it's all out there for you. So start to watch those people and learn and study. Do you like what they do? What could you be doing differently? And just, again, do your homework and be ready to work hard if it's something that you want, because it's going to take a while before you can start to charge $1,000 for something. Just watching Tom, it's only been a couple of years where we've really been monetizing things, and it took him 14 years to get there. I'm not saying that he couldn't have grown more aggressively. That wasn't his focus or goal, but you have to decide where you're going to be and just really do your homework and not have this expectation that in 1 year or 2 year or 3 years you're going to be at 1 million subscribers, with all of these big people sponsoring your channel. I think it takes a little bit more time and effort to get there.
So let's talk about another position that you said there's kind of a vacuum for in this space right now. The role that you actually fill to some degree, the marketing, not the marketing from a social media standpoint, like creating a following and building a YouTube channel, but the actual in-publisher marketing. You say
job.
Right now it's the hardest job
to fill. So for Simon, no, Jeff. Jeff is out of industry. He's amazing. He's professional. He's also
remarkably
Jeff is the marketing person for Simon.
Jeff is great. It helps that he looks like Luke Skywalker.
It does help.
It helps.
It does help.
But but he was out of industry. He's in Hollywood. He's out in LA. He is great. to hire him for like a small to mid-range publisher, there's no way they could have a person like that, right? Because I don't know how much Jeff makes, but I guarantee you it's more than like the $23,000 a year or whatever most publishers are paying their friend to do their social media or whatever.
Yeah.
And so that is the problem, right? So Kira Peevely is an amazing example. Like I met Kira. Kira literally was a marketing person who was in charge of accounts for Walmart. Mm-hmm. She handled all of Walmart's social media presence. It was an insane. Like she worked for the fellow I was telling you about that worked with me before, Brian. She was an employee of his. Kira has since gone on. I mean, Kira was my boss when I was the president at Colossal. She's works in games. She has Off Duty Ninja. They do marketing for people like Renegade. I mean, I can't even think of
She runs probably one of the most effective marketing agencies in the board game space.
Well, what's incredible about her is that people can't even find one person, and she has an entire team of people that work for her. And the reason why...
But she's doing so by leveraging a team of publishers who she's contracting with, right?
Sure, but the reason she's able to do that is because she's a legitimate marketing person with a legitimate marketing background, right? Mm-hmm. So a lot of people's perception of marketing in this industry is, well, I need someone to go and run my Kickstarter, and I need someone to go and talk about our stuff on like, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, whatever, and that is not a marketing manager, right? That is more like...
What does a marketing manager actually do?
Oh my God, I don't even know how to answer that question. That's we talk about this. Like even you do more advertising, right? You said than marketing.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it's a misnomer in a lot of places. Like really high up people that do marketing, like Ruby, who used to work at CMON. I mean, these people, there are very few of them in the industry. Maybe some of the larger scale publishers that have the resources. Why am I getting so passionate about this?
You're a marketing person at heart, Travis.
No, I'm like a guerrilla marketing person. I'm like, I know how to pound the pavement, and I know how to like sell, and I know how to like talk about the things that I make in an excited way that hopefully is palpable to consumers. But man, people like Jeff, people like Ruby, I mean, people like Lindsay. I mean, Lindsay's always forever saying like, well, she's down on herself, but she's awesome.
I have a something to add to this, but I'll let you finish because I actually do,
It's just really hard. I mean, like when I worked at Indie Boards and Cards, we were trying to hire a person, like a legitimate marketing person, not just a social media person, and we could not find anyone. When we did find someone, their wage expectation was 6 figures and up there.
Just didn't have it.
I mean, there was just no way.
Yeah.
I mean, like we could have hired an entire team of people for what that one person would have cost to do tons of other things, and just kind of hoped that we could limp through the marketing.
Are those people sometimes, if you can squeeze it, worth it though? Because my thought process and what I always like, as someone that's came from a freelance world where I've had to market myself and also done, so I do consulting work now for outside of the board game industry. Mm-hmm. I do consulting work for people that are trying to like leverage social media platforms and grow, and it's been a fun experiment. But my thought process is effective marketing and effective marketing campaigns pay for themselves. I should earn my own income. So if you do it right, if I'm demanding 6 figures, it's because in a year I should have, like, or 2 years maybe, like, let's give us some buy-in room, but like, theoretically, I should have paid for myself a few times over.
I mean, the marketing strength at CMON, I can scarcely fathom. Like, we have, like, just so many talented people from in and out of industry. We have, like, lots of people that have grown up within the company, and then we have people like Jeff who are from out of market, right? I mean, like, some other people I think are really good at this, like James Hudson. Like, he just is always online. He's sitting there smiling, talking about his games, what he's doing. He's trying to kind of do what you talk about. He's trying to include other people, give shout outs to other people. I think he's really good. Kira, I think, is like a genius. I mean, but the reality is a lot of the people I think who hold marketing positions in this industry are probably more social media people. No,
I don't think, but that's not to discredit that, because I do think that is a component of marketing.
It's valuable.
It is a piece of marketing, right? marketing can be it's a more complex thing so I think that people in the industry are like, I've got a shoestring budget. I only have this much money. I absolutely need someone to run my social media, bare minimum. But you have to take it to the next level. You have to go to the next step. It's more than that. It is that, and that is important, but you've got to have that next step. And that social media person may not be able to fill that. They might be ready to grow into that. They might be the right person. They just need a little bit more experience, knowledge, desire, time to grow into the position of marketing, and that can grow with time. But I think that publishers need to be clear about what it is that they're looking for, and don't expect the person that you're paying $15,000, $20,000 a year to fill the position and expect them to be doing the job of someone who you would pay six figures, or $80,000, $90,000 a year, and have them run your campaign when they don't have the experience. So if you want a true seasoned marketing person, be prepared to pay them.
Do you agree with my theory that a seasoned marketing person theoretically earns their salary?
Yes, I do.
It
I
should.
do, and
it takes some investment, but
I do. But I think that what you can do is maybe do something where it's, hey, I'm going to give you this base salary, and then you have the earning potential. I'm going to give you a portion of the proceeds from the Kickstarter campaign, or give them an incentive to want to work for that money, some sort of a commission base. That way, it's shared responsibility, shared risk. And then you can grow that way so that the publisher has some skin in the game, and the person who's the marketing person also has an incentive to want to do a better job and grow beyond what they, what you would expect on a base.
One of the pieces of advice I heard early on around owning a business, and I've went through this journey of being a freelancer to now actually needing and starting to pay people and run a team and treat people fairly, and I need the help, so if I need the help I have to respect their time, and it's this balance. And one of the things that I heard that really stuck with me is that if you want to hire someone, you can hire someone, but you'll only get what you paid them for, and you'll only get what you valued their time at. And if you want someone to work like you work, well, you have to identify why you work as hard as you work and what you're after. And it's I work as hard as I work, one, because I love what I do, and two, because I have buy-in. Every time and cent and effort and blood, sweat, and tears I put in pays dividends to me. And so I always admire the approach that people take, where it's I will do my very best to give you whatever you've earned. If someone can outwork me and take Quackalope, come be on every single video, leverage my you could take it from me. You could literally but the reality is you couldn't, because I'm me. But you could. I will tip my hat. My Discord community, we've got a 5,000 member Discord community. We launched it over the pandemic, ran a successful giant convention in there, more successful than a lot of the digital conventions anyone else was running. It was a really cool place. That community, because I did not have the bandwidth to run it or hold it, has been fully handed over to my Patreon community, to a member who spent 6 months to a year really battering down the hatches and moderating the team and figuring out the mod team and figuring out the parameters. And so at a certain point he came to me and he said, hey, we've got this up and running and you're just not around enough. So the mod team's asking for you to sign this over so we can do the infrastructure work we need to do, so we can apply for partnership with Discord, so we can just have this thing. And I'm that's a 5,000 member group. That's a good Discord community in our space. He'd earned that. Whatever he wants to do with it now, And it's still my space. It's still my group, and I didn't lose control of it in a way. Right. But I think people should have buy-in So I love your model of if you can't afford to pay them, but they want to be involved or they want to be in it, give them a reason to care. And then watch them, if they're good at what they do, watch them crush it.
And that's the way, it goes back to our earlier conversation of getting into the industry and learning. If you have a desire and you want to learn a little bit more, you find opportunities, because you can't do it all, right? So now you have an opportunity that a person can fill, and if they have that desire and passion, you're hey, you got it, go with it, and there's your end.
So for people who are watching this, who are trying to determine, because we're kind of addressing the publisher aspect of publishers getting people into this space, but for people who are watching this who are trying to determine how they enter a role, if this is one of the roles that's needed the most, how does someone go about now at 18 or 48, learning the skills necessary to be an effective team member so that they can create a position that's worth the money. Like, my advice would just be what I've always done, which is, like, apply and learn and study for 20 hours a day on YouTube or every second you have, and spend a year absorbing yourself, and then give your time away for free, and then the moment you think you've been a proven success, capitalize on that.
I'm a work hard, not work smart kind of guy.
I am too.
Yeah. Yeah. Lindsay, like, I have a tremendous amount of respect for the fact that she, like, does research, and I just want to, like, I'm like, well, I'll just try, you know.
But there's value to both of those, right?
Sure.
Sometimes you can spend too much time researching and not enough time just rolling up your sleeves and saying, I'm going to learn by doing. And there's different personalities that learn in different ways. So I think you need both. You need to have the risk-taking factor to try, and you need to do a little research, right?
I think it's really rude that you just took over my compliment to you.
Adding to what you said.
No, I agree. I mean, I think what you said earlier was really true. And I think, and like, just to clarify, I'm not saying like a person who is a social media person doesn't have value. Running a Kickstarter campaign, honestly, those people are criminally underpaid. The Kickstarter campaign is like, you know, that job might as well be called like professional hyena fighter. Like you're being dropped into a pit with a ballpoint pen and you're fighting for your life and every day with strangers. I've run 34 campaigns.
Okay.
And there is less of me in the world for doing that. Oh, for sure. It erodes your soul. I mean, it erodes your soul. So I have a tremendous amount of respect for those people. But the people who are taking the overall look at the company, the brand, all that stuff, and trying to elevate it to this higher level, that's a whole other thing. That's not talking to people on social media, you know. And those people really are truly difficult to find.
Interesting. So the last category, and then we'll call it a video. We'll call it a wrap. I know. Established publishers. Established publishers in the space. We went through brand new publishers. We went through content creators. We went through probably the biggest area where people can enter the hobby space right now if they're looking for a career and not just creating something of their own, which is the marketing role. Established publishers. High and low advice for them. So, for myself, established publishers in this space. Well, I put out a video a while ago talking about one of the things I expect from publishers of any size across the board, especially publishers that are operating and running things on Kickstarter, which is just the act of communicating with their fan base and working alongside people that have like invested and been a part of this journey. And so that's something that I constantly and continually reiterate, and it's because people give so much grace when you've done that. You know, like one of my favorite games of all time, just an incredible title, KDM, has a lot of people that are big fans of them and also have dropped the ball in a few areas just around effective communication. And so it's one of those things that I kind of entered the hobby with this community of people that have been growingly frustrated with a lack of effective and continued conversation. The other thing for big publishers, I don't know. This is a really hard spot to give advice. How do I give advice to like...
To people who are already succeeding?
Yeah. I mean, it's weird because some of them aren't. Some of them are still on a shoestring.
I think you said something really...
And trying to make it work.
You said something, and I'm not trying to like high-five my own company here, but you said something about CMON earlier. That you said they were like the largest company that's still...
Oh, sure. So I have a thing that I say every now and then around the anger and vitriol that CMON experiences from time to time. And it's weird because as a content creator, when we were at 1,000 subscribers, we had 10 people that hated us. And I know that because we had at least every video, there was like 2 thumbs down that hit within a few seconds, like bot click basically, like just subscribed and wanted to discourage us, right? And then we got to 10,000 subscribers. We had 100 people that hated us. And it's like, oh wow, like 100 people, like that's not just the guy down the block. Like that's a decent, like maybe those 100 people are right. And then we got to 40,000 subscribers, and I've got a block of people 250, like, you know, enough people that I'll randomly stumble across people talking crap on the internet, right? Like I had one where someone had shared my video and the top comment there, upvoted like 4 times, was like, I don't know what it is about that guy. I just hate him. And so I responded, just simple comment, just thanks. Like, and it ended up with like, he had 12 thumbs up and I had 16 and most of them were laughing emojis, right? But it's like, people forget that there's a human behind
Absolutely.
the thing that you're creating. And you look at companies like, and not to disparage them, but Asmodee, Fantasy Flight, you look at companies like Pokemon, Nintendo and their creator policy, you look at, things like Magic the Gathering, and again, the individuals in those companies probably do still care. But when it comes to a corporate headquarters and how they have to respond to the wider world, they just can't anymore. They're almost too big to be able to do that. Mm-hmm. And as campaign happens and Simon gets embroiled in various different conversations, it's one of those things where, like, I keep telling people, Simon's the biggest company in our industry that still actually cares about what the fan says, that still goes through and reads and might move slow sometimes. Like, you're a big, sometimes lumbering company. You have to admit to that. But you actually do still read and invest and do your best to do service to the community. And it's this weird logistics thing where you all are so big, you have really loud voices that don't like you. And
it's an easy target, right?
That's what I'm saying. You're so big. Like, I hope that one day I have 100,000 people that hate me. Because as the math falls, that means I have a lot more people that really love me. Like, that means I've got 10 million subscribers, right? But when you say it the other way, that feels, that's rough.
Yeah.
I can confirm, too. Like, I can tell you, like, from all the way up to the very top people, that they pay attention. They care. They want people to be happy.
And you also do mess up sometimes. You do.
Sure.
You're humans.
Yeah.
You're humans in companies.
But
what company doesn't?
Sure. But it's nice to know that they care. Because I've definitely seen people be like, so what?
Sure.
If they don't like it, they can go somewhere else. I've seen that attitude in the industry.
I think most companies write above their walls. And one of the things that Alex and I talked about, and I think he did a video on this, was if you want Simon to become that type of company, keep doing exactly what you're doing. Because then eventually they get to a point where they go, okay, great. Like, now we just won't read the comments. Now we just won't respond.
Yeah, it's tough. I mean, that stuff's tough. It's like I said, I used to really love BGG, and I just don't anymore. It's sad. Like, when you go look at a game, and you look at the ratings, and there's just like, oh, why are there 150
before anyone's played it?
Like, there's 151 ratings on here with no explanation. It's just like...
It's a little unfair.
Well, it's just mean. It's just ugliness and meanness, and I don't know where it comes from. I mean, I don't. It's, you said this, and I've been doing this. I mean, like I said, I was a musician, so I've been putting pieces of myself out into the world to get stomped on by strangers forever. But yeah, there's a person. There's not even in a game. Oh my God, there's not one person. There is a team of people behind this stuff. I mean, the artists, the graphic designers, even down to people who do the thankless jobs like logistics. And there's so many people it takes for the time that someone thinks up an idea until that box arrives on your doorstep. There is so many people involved.
So what should those big publishers be doing better?
I mean, I think communication, number one. I think transparency goes a long way. I think it goes a long way. Like, just being honest, like, mistakes happen. I mean, manufacturing mistakes, logistical decisions, things like that. You just have to own it. I mean, and if you don't own it, people sniff it out. There's no sense in even trying to pretend like. Don't throw up a smoke screen. You just if you screw up, you gotta be honest with it. I think the other thing too is just like, man, so many people. I feel like, and I'm not naming names. I think certain publishers can get to a point where they just start like NASCAR T-shirt gunning games into the world, and like I don't even know if they like the stuff they're making.
Yeah, just signing anything and.
Man, I tell you, I promise you, at Simon, the people who are making this stuff love the crap out of what they're doing.
I heard
love
early
the
on
crap out of it.
that if you want to be a successful designer in the board game industry, you have to do something like, because your average income for a regular like family of two,
$1 a year. Yeah.
You have to do something like put out 3 to 4 games that are getting signed and getting commission from a year to be a functional like slightly above minimum wage worker, which is kind of crazy to think about that amount of output.
I mean, I've been doing this for 10 years. I still get royalties. I just got a royalty check the other day for 6 months of work on 2 titles, and it was $100.
Good for you.
My first game, I'll get like a $5 or $6 check once a year. It's pretty cool. But that game's, my God, the game's almost 10 years ago.
But still, I mean, it's weird. The output has to be insane for some people.
I just think that, there's like this spaghetti on a wall approach that I just don't think works. And I think that...
You should cater everything.
It's just like making stuff. And there's a real... this is a whole other conversation, but, you said this earlier, there's a lot of good games, but there's not a lot of great games. Mm-hmm. Not every game is great, I think is what you said, actually. But it's like, why are we even making some things? If we know that it's not excellent, like if you know that you're not stepping up to the plate and you're swinging as hard as you can, I don't even know why bother. It's kind of weird. Like, you're just hoping, or you're just kind of half-heartedly. I don't know. I think I've been guilty of that a few times probably in my career. Like, I signed something and I was like, this is kind of interesting. But most of the time I am deeply in love with what I am doing. Like in love, feel excitement. Like, I wake up, it's like running in the back of my brain. And I think that's where you really need to be when you're making stuff. You have to be excited.
Well, do you have an interesting position because you actually liaison? You're not really public facing in almost any capacity. Yeah. So you actually liaison a lot with these larger publishers because Dice Tower is one of the biggest channels in the space.
Yeah.
What should these larger publishers be aware of or be doing better than they currently are?
My biggest piece of feedback would be get a good customer service, a good sound stable, solid customer service person who can have a service level agreement that says, I'm going to answer any question that comes in, within 24 hours or whatever it is that you say and back it up and, just make sure that you are consistent about responding to your fan base, your customers. You need to, I just think it's like one of the most basic things that you can do. That customer service person deserves every penny you pay them.
Yeah.
Because it's a thankless job, and I think it's, you really need that because it matters so much. People care when their voices are heard, when they feel like they can get someone on the other end who gives them answers. And you keep your people that way. You keep your fans. You keep your integrity. And also I think that you need to get back in touch with, once you get bigger, you start to lose touch with why you got into this in the first place. It kind of speaks to what you're talking about. I think people they get bigger and they have to pay all of the people below them. So it might not be about being in love with the game anymore or the industry anymore. It might just be, hey, I gotta pay rent, I gotta pay all these people that are underneath me. So I think maybe getting back in touch with why you're doing this in the first place, and make sure that your mission, you're tied to your mission and pay it forward. I think that if you're big, it's now time for you to start doing some service for your community.
Sure.
How can you be an ambassador, open a door for a person who's starting out, and maybe you can envision where you were. If you feel out of touch and out of love with what you're doing, then start to get involved with your community and find a way to fall in love with it again by giving back to people who are just starting out so that you can be a mentor to them.
Yeah. There we have it. Ultimately this boils down to a weird, tight-knit community that still has a lot of startup, still has a ton of promise, and still has a lot of reasons why you should be wary and careful in nearly every aspect, big and small alike. Hopefully you found this conversation interesting. My hope is to do more of them and a vaster array of them and have different tones and different positions with a lot of them. Like I did a full interview with Austin Harris from Ivy Studios where I took the role of a fan, and I was like, I'm going to try to kind of just be a dick. And have a conversation, right? And it's like, I think the more, like I said at the beginning, the more stories and the more perspectives and the more conversations we have around the industry, the more professional we get and the more weird we get and the more successful I think we get across the board. I want my community to understand the logistics and nightmare and infrastructure that publishers go through and creators go through in the heart that they put on the line. I want publishers to understand that my community is a real group of people that care and are invested in and are backing the games because they believe in what you're creating. And it's not a small thing to ask people to trust in your dream. I want publishers to understand how to liaison effectively with social media, how to do this kind of networking and grow their own fan bases and really support those pockets of people that we have. And then ultimately, I want my channel to be, and the channels around me to be, as big and as successful as possible so we can grow the space and support publishers and hire people at fair wages and fair prices and just be a good impact on this space. So, thank you for watching. Thank you for being here. Whatever the case, whatever you do, remember to do the important thing. Get out and play some games. And we'll see you next time.